I had somebody ask me if I was going to do a video when I canned the carrots, so I am putting up this short video of my canning process on carrots here, but I don't want to come across as some kind of a canning expert. I've done a lot of canning over the years of various things, but this is actually the first time I've ever canned carrots. I never had a pressure canner before until this year, and any low-acid fruit or vegetable canning should be done under pressure for safety reasons. So I am following the instructions that came with my Presto pressure canner, and the instructions doesn't say to peel new carrots, it says to scrape them. I don't know what that means. Anyway, I washed them under cold water and brushed each one with a vegetable brush, and I haven't peeled them. I just think myself peeling them, there goes the best part of the nutrients out of a fresh vegetable. So no peeling here, but if you think it's safer to peel them, then by all means peel yours when you can them. I don't know, all summer long I pull carrots out of the garden, rinse them off with the garden hose and eat them, and I'm still here, so I guess I'm not too concerned about whether or not they're peeled. And the next thing that I do is also optional. The instructions just say to can them in hot water if you want, or you can add a half teaspoon of salt to each 500 milliliter pint jar. The only thing to remember when you're adding salt is to add either a kosher salt or a canning salt, which are basically the same thing, but the important thing there is that the salt not have any iodine in it. Iodized salt will turn your vegetables brown. It won't damage them in any way. You can still eat them, but it will turn the vegetables brown. These jars are hot. I sterilize my jars in the oven, wash them, rinse them, and put them in the oven at 250 degrees Fahrenheit. And these have been there longer than I normally leave them. You only have to leave them there for 20 minutes or so. They've probably been there for a couple of hours, but they're still very hot. So I will now get the little funnel thing that I use for filling up the jars and put the carrots in the jars. I cut the carrots roughly into discs mostly, but not tiny little discs because I don't want them to go all mushy in the canning process. And the baby carrots, the really small ones, I've just cut the tops and bottoms off of them. So there is some shrinkage when you can cook a vegetable. It will shrink down so that the jar won't be full when I finish, but with carrots you can't really compress many more in there. That's about it. So I'll finish filling the jars and then come back and add the water and seal them up. My pressure canner will hold 10 of these 500 milliliter jars, pint jars. And I want to can at least a dozen jars, more if I've got more carrots cut up here. It's hard to judge. So I'm going to divide the batch and put 6 in each time. And all I'm adding here is just plain old boiled water, along with the salt. Those are the only 2 ingredients, other than carrots. And as I said, the salt is optional. I just think it gives them a much better flavor. I would end up salting them anyway if I didn't put it in initially. So. Now I've been heating up the lids. It's just a matter of putting a lid and a band on each one and finger tightening it. I'll come back in a minute when we're ready to put them in the canner. Hopefully the lens doesn't steam up over the boiling canner. But the canner has 3 quarts of water in the bottom of it, which has been heating, so it's now gently boiling. There's a mark on the bottom of the canner that shows you when you've got 3 quarts in there. There's my first 6 jars anyway. Now, the lid goes on and is tightened, put into place rather. You can see that little vent there. That eventually is where the pressure weight will go. But right now, you're waiting for the water to come back to a full boil and for steam to really start coming out of that hole. And once it does, you time it for 10 minutes before you put the weight on. That expels a lot of the air from inside the canner and gives you a better pressure for canning with. So we'll come back when it's time to add the weight. Well, it's been boiling and shooting out steam now for about 10 minutes. And the next thing to watch for is this thing here that's whirling around and rattling. So after I put the weight on the vent here, that should pop up, and that indicates that there's pressure. There it is, okay. That means that it's starting to develop pressure. And now I have to watch the gauge. I won't sit here with you watching it until it gets there. I'll come back. But the gauge gets up to 11 pounds pressure. And these are supposed to be processed for 25 minutes in pint jars under 11 pounds of pressure. So sometimes you have to regulate the amount of flame. I have a gas stove here, or I suppose the amount of electricity that you're using if you use an electric range, but to try to hold it at 11 pounds or thereabouts for 25 minutes. But come back in a few minutes when it's reached its pressure. Well, it has reached 11 pounds and gone a little bit beyond, so I'm going to turn the heat down a bit. But I'll start the timer now and time it for 25 minutes. Well, that's the end of 25 minutes under 11 pounds pressure. And now you remove the weight. That allows the steam and pressure to escape, but it isn't safe to open until this same little pressure gauge that we watched pop up at the beginning, until that drops back down. So once that is dropped back down, you can open it and remove your jars. Well, the pressure valve thing dropped down a minute or two ago, so I guess we're safe to open. I have one of these jar lifter things for canning. It has seen better days, but I still use it. That's one of the jars there. You can get a look at it. The water level seems to have dropped a bit in them, and it's still bubbling away. Well, that's batch number 1, the first 6 jars. 3 of them, something happened and some of the water seems to have been forced out of them. The water level is quite a bit lower in them than it was. The 3 behind, of course, I'm not showing you those. You can see that one there a little better. See the water level's down a bit in it. I don't know quite what that means. I'm going to watch them carefully, and if they seal, you hear them pop and the lid goes down a bit when they seal, then I'll just put them at the front of the shelf and use them first. And if they don't seal, I'll put them in the refrigerator and use them immediately, I guess. I'm going to wash and sterilize more jars. There's one snapping already. I'm going to wash and sterilize more jars. I think I've got enough carrots left to do more than 6 jars, so I think the next one will be a full batch of 10 jars, which is all the pressure canner will hold. So I won't take you through that whole process again, but I'll probably show you the finished product with all the jars here cooling. Well, I'm not sure what I did wrong the first time with the 3 bottles that lost some of their fluid. Maybe they weren't tight enough when I put them in there or something. Anyway, I just pulled out 9 more bottles out of the second batch, and there's no problem at all. They've all retained all the fluid that was in them. So I think I'll do what I said I was going to do the first time. I will put those 3 bottles at the front of the shelf and use them first. They all sealed perfectly. There's no problem there. And I discovered that my canner that supposedly holds 10 jars holds 9. So I have it on once again with 1 jar in it to get all of my bottles finished here. There would be 16 bottles altogether. I guess there's 15 sitting there in front of us now. I think the problem with the 9 jars and the 10 jars, it's an American canner, and I'm sure that the instructions are referring to pint jars. My jars are Canadian and they're metric, 500 milliliters, half a liter, so evidently they're slightly larger than a pint jar. And I can only get 9 in. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and that's my carrots canned. That's less than half of the carrots that I pulled. I don't want to preserve all of them. I want some for eating fresh anyway, but I've got a lot more that I'll be blanching and freezing. The reason I do 2 methods, the canned ones are cooked. They were raw when I put them in, but they're cooked in the jars now, so you can just open those up and heat them up and eat them as a vegetable with your meal. But the blanched and frozen ones are still raw, so they can be added to soups and stews and that sort of thing. So I like to have both methods. Thank you very much for watching. Talk to you later.